Hey guys, welcome to today's video. We're going to be going over 5 quarterbacks on the hot seat next season. Before we get started though, please drop a quick like and a sub on today's video. That would really help my channel grow. I'd really appreciate that. With that said, I hope you enjoy the video and let's dive right into it. So let's kick this off with our top 5 quarterbacks that are on the hot seat in 2021. Let's start with Derek Carr. And Derek Carr, I made a video about him earlier this offseason where I did a film session on him, and I talked about why this guy doesn't get enough credit. He doesn't get enough credit. He's a really good quarterback. He's, in my opinion, top 12 quarterback in the NFL with some real playmaking abilities, and we've seen that before during his career. Remember that season? I think that might have been that 2016 season maybe. Really good year, 28 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 12-3 record for the Raiders that season. That was a great year from Derek Carr, and he's been able to be that kind of player. I mean, if we look over the past 2 years, has never had more than 10 interceptions. And last year was a really good year for him. 16 games, 4,000 passing yards, 27 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. But look at the record at the end of the day, 8-8. And for me, I think Derek Carr has the ability to be a really good quarterback in the NFL. And I've said that time and time again. But can he win? Can he win? I mean, he really can't win. Haven't made the playoffs since 2016, right? 6-9, 4-12, 7-9, 8-8. None of those are good enough to make the playoffs. He haven't made the playoffs in the last 4 years. And Derek Carr has been the face of the Raiders franchise since he was able to really start his career there and really find some success. And I'd say since 2015, right? That was probably that first season where he really found some room to run under. But overall, this is a guy that I think can play some high levels of football. The truth is, the Raider Nation, I think, is ready to move on from him. There's been talk about potentially, going out and getting another quarterback, maybe trying to get a star like Aaron Rodgers. But overall, I just think Derek Carr, his future might be limited. If John Gruden and him can't figure it out, if they can't find a way to make the playoffs, I think that Carr is out the door. And I think that's a shame because Carr is a really talented player who doesn't deserve the hate that he gets. I really think that he's a top 12 quarterback, or on that, he's in that cusp, maybe top 14, but he's up there among the NFL's best quarterbacks, definitely in the top half of quarterbacks in the NFL. He's a guy who should be playing for a playoff team. The truth is, he can't make it to the playoffs. That's been the case for the past few seasons, and I think that might be a reason that he is on the hot seat in 2021. Now, though, let's look at Drew Lock, and I guess we can kind of rope in Teddy Bridgewater, too. Drew Lock, drafted in the second round back in 2019, 42nd overall by the Broncos. I remember that pick very distinctively. I thought he would have been a first-round player, and we didn't see a full season from Drew Lock last year, but we saw 13 games. And in those 13 games, we saw basically 3,000 yards passing, 16 touchdowns, and a league-high 15 interceptions. Really appalling stats. And these are not good stats. 4-9 quarterback record. The Broncos were not good last year, and Drew Lock was a big part of it. He wasn't able to be the success, to find the success that we saw glimpses of in that first season, where he led the Broncos to a 4-1 record. I mean, he won the same amount of games with the Broncos in 2019 in 5 games as he did with the Broncos in 2020 in 13 games. So sure, overall, the Broncos were not as good as they were in 2019 under Drew Lock, but overall, this was a team last year in Denver that just couldn't find the same success that they had somehow found under Drew Lock in 2019. Plus, look at the completion percentage, 57.3%, absolutely garbage, and I think that's because Courtland Sutton wasn't part of that of that team last season. He was injured early on in the year, couldn't continue the season. But Drew Lock, I think, this is really third year, make or break year. First 2 seasons, we've seen glimpses of hope, but we haven't really seen elite quarterback play, especially consistent play from Drew Lock. And that's something that I'm really hoping to see from Drew Lock. I think if he isn't able to, find some consistency and find some elite play anytime soon, then he's out the door. And I think they brought in Teddy Bridgewater as a way to get him going, to get him maybe light a fire underneath him. But that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But at the end of the day, I think Drew Lock really needs to step it up next year if he wants to have a shot at staying in Denver anytime longer. And I think same thing with Teddy Bridgewater. If he wants to have a shot in Denver for the long run, he has to win the starting job, and he's got to play like a legit starter. And I think that Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater, both of them, really have some work to do in 2021. Now, though, let's go to Kirk Cousins. Sorry for a little bit of a freezing here for my camera. But nonetheless, Kirk Cousins, I think this is an interesting one because Kirk Cousins, I think, once again, he's a top 12-ish kind of quarterback in the NFL. And my stupid computer is freezing now. But okay, so look at the 2020 stats: 16 games, 7-9 record as a quarterback, 67.6% completion percentage, 4,200 yards, 35 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. Overall, solid stats, but the 7-9 record is not good. And sure, that was large part because of the defense. But at the end of the day, he wasn't quite good enough. He just wasn't quite good enough, and that's kind of been the story with Kirk Cousins. If you look at all these records from Kirk Cousins, even back to his Washington days, 9-7, 8-7, 7-9, 8-7-1, 10-5, 7-9. He's mediocre. He's a mediocre. All these records are mediocre. 10-5 is obviously that's a good season for a quarterback. Obviously missed one game that year. Made the Pro Bowl in 2019, one of his 2 Pro Bowl appearances. The other one was with Washington. But overall, this is a guy that can throw for 4,200 yards. He can be pretty accurate with the football. But the question is, can he win the big games? Can he win the big games? We haven't seen that. We haven't seen the playoff success. And at some point, you've got to wonder, is Kirk Cousins really going to have a future in Minnesota, especially because Minnesota was supposed to be in the running for a guy like Justin Fields. They really wanted Justin Fields. They weren't able to go out and make a move for him, but I thought that would have been interesting. Obviously, Kirk Cousins, this guy can play football. He's a consistent quarterback, and he's shown that he can be a veteran, solid, accurate quarterback in the NFL who can make plays, throw for 30-plus touchdowns in a season, and be a guy that you can really count on. And the wide receivers were there last year. The weapons were there last year. The run game was there last year. And sure, the defense is a large part for the 7-9 record, but Kirk Cousins doesn't win enough big games. He doesn't. And at the end of the day, when you're a franchise quarterback and you're trying to be paid like a franchise quarterback, you've got to win the big games, and Kirk Cousins hasn't really done that. And I think that's why, next year's a make it or break it year for Cousins in Minnesota. And I guess it's a similar thing for Matt Ryan here too, for the Atlanta Falcons. Ryan, coming off that MVP performance in 2016, that was his year where he absolutely went off, and you can look at those stats right there. But 2020 was a year kind of back to reality in a way, I guess. 65% completion percentage, 4,500 yards, 26 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Still a really good year for a quarterback, but the 4-12 record says what the 4-12 record says, and it says that Matt Ryan couldn't lead his team to wins. And the truth is, with Matt Ryan getting up there in age, he's going into his age 36 season, he's not going to get any better, right? He's not really going to get any better. The truth is, can he play at a Pro Bowl level? And he hasn't played at a Pro Bowl level since 2016. He hasn't, and he hasn't made a Pro Bowl since 2016. I would argue that 2018 he should have made the Pro Bowl. 5,000 yards, 35 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Those are ludicrous stats. Didn't make the Pro Bowl that year. And I think, arguably, like 2016, no, those aren't Pro Bowl stats either. But yeah, that 2018 season should have been a Pro Bowl. Anyway, 2020, wasn't the year for Matt Ryan's Falcons, but he's still able to put up productive stats. The truth is, they couldn't win games, and that offense, although Calvin Ridley was really good, the whole Julio, Matt Ryan, Julio wants out of the Falcons thing, that's another thing. And I think that although Matt Ryan's playing good enough football to have a starting job in the NFL and to be the starter for that Falcons team, I think that the Falcons, it's going to be time for them to move on. It really is. He's getting up there in age. Julio's getting up there in age. There's talks of him leaving the building. So why not try and clean house and really restart with Matt Ryan? And I think if Ryan is able to play at a Pro Bowl level and really high level and make this team win, 8 games next year, especially with that defense, which is really rough, maybe there's a chance for him to stay into the future. But honestly, I think he would have to make the playoffs with this team and play really good football for him to have a real, like a 95% chance of being the starter next year. Because at the end of the day, I think in 2022, this Falcons team, we're going to really see a shift from their older players like Ryan and maybe Julio. I don't know if Julio's still with the team in 2021. But in 2022, I don't think we'll see Matt Ryan and Julio on the Falcons. So that'll be a little bit sad, but I think it's an end of an era. Matt Ryan, I think it's not necessarily he's on the hot seat, but if he doesn't play to a Pro Bowl playoff level, playoff quarterback level standard, this guy's not going to have a job with the Falcons in 2022. Now, though, let's go to the final player that we're going to talk about, and that's going to be, as my computer really wants to be slow, Daniel Jones. And Daniel Jones, similar situation to Drew Lock, very similar situation to Drew Lock, except slightly different. First season, he actually played pretty solidly for his resources, right? Played in 12 games, threw for 3,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 61.9% completion percentage. But last year was a fall. It was not good. It was not pretty. 14 games, threw for basically half the touchdowns and basically the same amount of interceptions, and threw for basically 3,000 yards. So it wasn't a productive season for Daniel Jones, and we didn't see that, that ascension that we thought that we would, especially, yeah, sure, he didn't have Saquon Barkley, and he was struggled with injuries a little bit, but overall, we were expecting for him to play better. Next season's a massive season for Daniel Jones, and I've already talked about the importance of season 3 for young quarterbacks. We talked about that with Drew Lock, and the same thing applies here with Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones needs to get off to a good start in 2021. He really needs to play a solid 2021 season, and the reason for that is the Giants are going to have all their weapons, and they invested in more weapons this offseason. Sure, Saquon Barkley's coming back, but when you spend $18 million a year on Kenny Golladay, and you have Sterling Shepard, and you have Darius Slayton, and you've got Evan Engram, who, yeah, that's a whole other story. There's weapons on that offense. There are no more excuses for Daniel Jones to, not have success. And we saw what he's able to do with his legs, too. This guy's an athletic guy. He can throw the ball downfield. And although accuracy can be an issue sometimes, this is the year for him to step it up. He's got the weapons. He's got the offensive abilities. He's got the right guys on that offense for something to happen. All he needs to play well, and if he's able to play well, he's got a job in 2022, and I think he might have another contract. But I think if with all this talent on this offense, if he's not able to show up, there is no way he's getting another contract with the Giants. It's really a make it or break it year, and it's a very similar thing to the Drew Lock thing, except the Broncos didn't really spend as much money on getting some offensive guys on the outside to really help. They spent a lot more money on their defense, getting Kyle Fuller and Ronald Darby. But the Giants invested on the offensive side of the football. They need to see production from Daniel Jones. It's an absolute must if he wants to continue being a Giant in the future. So with that said, I think you got to watch out for Derek Carr next year. You got to watch out for Drew Lock, Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins, and Daniel Jones as guys who are really on the hot seat moving into 2021. And with that said, that's pretty much going to end the video for today. Did you agree with my analysis? Why or why not? Leave your comments and thoughts in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Also, if you're new around here, please drop a like and a sub on today's video. I'd really appreciate that. And with that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. And until next time, see ya.